It's not that any of these ideas are wrong. It just brings on the core question. Is it your path? Is it your direct connection with God? Okay, so something I wanted to talk about today was New Age deceptions. Right now, we're steeped in New Age content, and we're sort of influxed with spiritual coaches, self-proclaimed gurus, a lot of secondhand content that's being passed, regurgitated, picked apart, cherry-picked from different religions, mashed together. And whilst this is interesting, and there is a greater degree of access to spiritual truths, there's also a greater degree of distortion of these ideas, and that can cause a great deal of confusion. It has people opening themselves up to higher dimensional information, but also entities, some of which aren't in good faith. And the New Age likes to paint a lot of the darkness with white light and sort of proclaim that all things are of God and are pure, when well, that's certainly not the case, especially for people who are new to these paths and haven't quite kindled their intuition, their discernment in actually being able to navigate what energies are right, what is not, what's distortion, what is not distortion, and so on. Rather than pick apart all of the ideas, I just wanted to speak to it as a whole, because there's a lot around channeling, light language, manifestation, Kundalini awakening, Tantra, yoga, etc., etc. And there's a lot of good things in all these areas. There's also a tremendous amount of information and lineages that have backed a lot of these teachings and protocols, which have over time allowed the individual to actually slowly build themselves up, widen their nervous system's capacity, and widened their consciousness, let's say, so that they're able to digest and integrate and embody these higher level teachings, which are not necessarily accessible to beginners, not for a hierarchical reason to occult someone from truth, but as a necessary path to build one up to it, so that, well, in worst case scenarios, there can be, psychosis, spiritual emergencies, dark nights of the soul. And some of these things are part of the process, and some of them are just unnecessarily traumatic and cause a lot of suffering. So without going into all of the different specific teachings, which I can't because I don't know, and I can't say anything about everything. And that's actually the point I want to get to. The secret, which we all have to necessarily cultivate, is discernment and connection with ourselves and with God and with spirit directly within, and not to rely on external sources to tell us how things should be, or how we should act, or how we should reference those external things to justify our actions. Because Well, the ego is very sly, and our capacity to fool ourselves is infinite. I mean, I know that from experience. And so when we're seeing all these videos around, like, let's say manifestation, and there's so many people just teaching courses on like, here's how to manifest, here's how to like cure your self-worth. In just 4 weeks, we're gonna do 5 calls for fucking $3,000 and we're gonna sort it all out. But the thing that we're overlooking here is those individuals, they're selling you their reality. It's the process by which they've gone through, and this is the same for spiritual gurus. If you take spiritual gurus, even like Ramdas, Adyashanti, Eckhart Tolle, whoever it is, Sadhguru, they're speaking to their own paths, and because that was their way of awakening, they can only speak from their direct experience, you know, which is perfect. You know, they're speaking from direct embodiment, connection to spirit directly, and then that is being sort of transmitted to you in their teachings, right? Now, if you now take that case and compare it to someone who's selling a course as an Instagram life coach, they're selling the information, and so they're also, you have to be worried that they're selling you their version of reality. And if there isn't your own discernment on what actually resonates for you and what doesn't resonate for you, then you're gonna end up simply like trying to force yourself to fit in someone else's shoes or someone else's lifestyle and clothes, which is going to be awfully awkward, because ultimately we want to be kindling our own expression, our own unique blueprint, our own creativity that we have within, which cannot be replicated and cannot be sold for someone else. And then in that, it's like, it's not that any of these ideas are wrong. These are all realities. They're potential realities that you can live in. Let's say you can digest all that content, that information from that particular teacher and person, and then you will slowly begin to live in that version of reality. You know, it's kind of like you're reality, I mean, it appears to be made out of language. And so if you adopt another syntax, then you're enveloped in that perspective of reality. And so it's not to say that it's wrong. It just brings on the core question. Is it your path? Is it your direct connection with God? Or is it actually disconnecting you? Are you becoming disembodied because you're trying to fit into another box or group and try on to make it fit, rather than allow reality and God, the universe, to reveal itself to you in its own way, for you to find your own way in this process, to find your own melody and to dance that. You know, there's nothing wrong with absorbing content from the external. It's depending on how plugged in we are to our own intuition, whether or not we can, in a healthy way, navigate that information and not absorb things that are not meant for us. Or, in a worst case scenario, open up the doorways to entities and energies which are not going to serve us, which is, I mean, yeah, that's not very fun. So how do we discern? Some questions that come up are, you could see how it's making you feel when you're listening to the information. Is it making you feel separated? Is it making you feel disconnected? Or is it like empowering and bringing you more into harmony and into clarity? You know, is it making you more confused, or is it clearing the lens of perception a little bit? And ultimately, it seems like this path is best cleaned and connected to directly by, I don't know, just going and sitting by a tree, for example. I feel like nature is the greatest teacher, and there's far more wisdom in an acre of forest than there is in most of the world's books. But it takes some time for us to be able to hear the voice of nature, which doesn't speak in words. And so this leads to the fact that, like, well, we're not separate from nature. You are not ultimately going to be taught or liberated by any external teacher or teaching. The best teachers out there appear to be pointing you back towards yourself, so that you may realize that you are the teacher. You are the one that's healing yourself. You know, even in a shamanic context where there is ayahuasca and a shaman and healers, let's say, who are there, but the healer is not healing you. They're simply holding an unconditional container for you to feel safe enough to heal yourself and to receive directly. And that's not to denounce the skill that takes for someone to even hold space for the kind of energies that are in those things. I don't want to denounce that. It's just to clarify that you're the one with the power, you know. And in any of the ways that we might be giving our power away to New Age ideas or concepts and teachings, these are, you know, eventually we're going to need to let go of those. Because there are even groups in the New Age which seem to be influenced by non-duality, and which I fell into for a long time, and I don't feel like I've left it, but there are groups that paint evil with light and denounce malevolence and claim that all is divine and of God, when if something appears evil to you, then listen to that, then observe that, and let your heart be the compass. Let your heart be the guide to where it is your attention should go, to what it is that you gravitate towards. And always coming back to the heart will bring clarity, because there's a lot of people saying all the right things, but what's the energetic signature that underlines that? Can we tune into that? Because it can say thousands of words more than what you hear with just the ears. Thanks for listening if you made it this far through my rambling, and I'll put a link to another video on intuition below if it interests you, and subscribe if you'd like to. Thanks.